Welcome to the inner world of filmmaking. I'm your host, Tammy McGarrow. I'm an editor, podcaster, and still photographer. In this show, I will interview filmmakers in all facets of production and distribution. I'm excited to have Max Clendaniel on to talk about his career as a writer-director who's worked on Pulped, Box of Charms, as well as films like the unknown masterpiece, Nonsense and Stranger Side. Welcome, Max. So happy to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So let's just start off with what was your journey into filmmaking and becoming a writer-director?
Yeah, I was very fortunate because in my high school, they gave you a lot of focus on looking towards the future instead of focusing on maybe always just homework. So they actually had a film festival program and a whole film program in my school from about 15. So the goal every year was to get as many of your short films into this film festival that played for the whole town. So from a really young age, I was able to have a good body of work for someone at my age. And then they really pushed you towards internships. So I think I was working on sets by the time I was about 15, which was really helpful.
And you started in LA, right?
I started in a small town called Enumclaw, Washington.
Oh, okay. And then how did you get to London?
Yeah, so initially I wanted to go into animation. I used to do a lot of stop motion throughout high school. And I was fortunate enough to go to a summer program in Bristol, which is the base of Aardman, which is where Wallace and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep, that kind of stuff's done. So I did a summer course there and absolutely loved the program, loved Bristol. It wasn't too big like London. There was still kind of the countryside element mixed with a bit of a city. So I started saving up after I went to that program for 2 years. And in that time, I got more into live action than animation. So I still went to Bristol, but I didn't do the animation course.
Okay. Yeah. And then how does one stay in London?
Yeah, no, it's hard. And in fact, I had to take a year out of college because my loan company went out of business. So I had to take a year out and save up and then go back again. So it's a constant battle. I only just got my leave to remain this year or last year. So it's been a mix of things, really.
And then how long have you been there now?
Oh, man, I've been here 15 years.
Wow. So it can happen.
It can. Yeah. It was a mix of usually to get over here, you need to either go to school or get sponsored by a company or get married. And I ultimately did all three.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's good. Yeah.
Yep.
So you check all three boxes.
Yeah.
So, what was, okay, so you worked for 9 years for ShortsTV as an in-house shooting director. Can you tell us about some of the projects you worked on during that time and the places that you got to travel?
Yeah. I never imagined I'd be at a company for so long, but I absolutely loved it because it was basically, hey, you get to meet loads of filmmakers and travel the world. So, who would want to leave that? Because a lot of the work we did, ShortsTV is a short film TV channel. And so I basically was either a one-man band or a small crew. And we did documentaries that kind of focused on a variety of different short film themed TV shows. So one of them was called The Pitch, which was kind of like an American Idol style show, but instead of singing, you were pitching for film funding, and we had rounds of that. So I learned a lot in terms of pitching, what to do and what not to do.
Right.
And then also Festival Road Trip was kind of our bigger 45-minute show, and that was the one where we would follow a handful of short filmmakers who were nominated in different categories, and then we followed the journey to see if they won. And the one we always got to do, which was loads of fun, was we followed all 15 of the Oscar-nominated short filmmakers. So sometimes we would kind of hedge our bets, and we would actually get in touch with them before they were nominated, people on the short list. So sometimes it was really cool because we got to follow them before they were nominated all the way to winning the Oscar.
Wow. And then what was your crew? Who came with you and what were you in charge of?
So a lot of the time, they in the early days, they would just send me and one other person out, and that was do it all. It was sometimes there was a time when we had someone on board who was afraid of flying, so it just had to be me that went on a lot of these trips on my own. And so it was literally produce it, kind of while I'm on the ground, shoot, interview, sound, light. Basically just showed up with a backpack and a suitcase, set up at people's homes or venues that we had. And then for the bigger ones like the Oscars, we go for like a crew of about 4 or 5. So that would usually have like a production coordinator, like the producer, B cam, and then I was usually A cam.
Now, what kind of camera did you use to shoot?
So we had to keep it really light because it was basically try and check one bag and then a backpack. So I would keep all the expensive stuff on me. So it was usually a couple C100s, handful of lenses, all the radio mics, and then, yeah, all the light panels and everything were in the bigger bag.
And is the C100 cameras?
Yeah.
Okay. And then it must have been really cool to be on the red carpet, and to shooting. So where were you? Did you have a position that you had to be in to shoot everything? And then did you get to go inside and shoot behind the scenes or backstage?
So we focused on the red carpet element because that's where we were able to interview the short filmmakers and kind of also get our cutaways of the short filmmakers on the red carpet, as well as all the, celebrity fanfare. And it varied where we got placed. Sometimes we were like right next to the main hub where they got to interview them. So I have like some footage of me like 5 feet away from Keira Knightley, which was
nice.
Amazing. And one time they accidentally, because at the time, since it was just cutaways, I was filming on just a DSLR. They put me with the photographers, but it actually worked to my benefit because I was the only one to get footage of when Benedict Cumberbatch photobombed U2. And so that was like a cool moment where, yeah, everyone got to see that footage for a bit. That was great.
Yeah, I saw it. It was really cool. Yeah, U2 as well. Yeah. When you're like, what kind of lens do you have to have? Because you have to be able to really zoom in.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully we're pretty close, and the whole thing is lit. Like there's a giant diffuse basically, so it's hard to mess it up, to be honest. And the celebrities stop at the right point, so you're just making sure you don't drop a camera. So it was like a 70 to 200. And basically they gave us very small sections, and so it was a real kind of, you were jammed up against 2 people, because we're trying to cover like 15. We're trying to get coverage of all 15 short filmmakers. So they had us both on the red carpet. And so it's really meant for one person. So I'm kind of jammed up next to my buddy, and we're just trying to get footage, and everyone's giving you an elbow or kind of,
right,
not giving you much room.
So are you on a monopod or a tripod? I mean,
yeah, monopods.
Yeah. And then do they announce it? Do they announce like, okay, here's the shorts, so that you know, you already know because you've been interviewing them before.
That's it, exactly.
You're just looking for them to come.
Yeah, so you can miss them very easily because there's so much going on, in between this celebrity and that. You're like, in the middle is just one of the people kicking around. You're like, there he is.
Right, yeah. And also, I saw that you did Filmmaker Spotlight, and you had Danny DeVito on for his short. I mean, that must have been pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's one of the highlights of my time there for sure. So, so we have 2 shows that kind of led up to me being able to do that. So we have Filmmaker Spotlight, where we interview filmmakers and they talk about their films that we've acquired for the channel. And then we have these things called Thoughts on Shorts, which are specifically for celebrities to talk about short films in general. And at the time, Danny DeVito was starring, and I think he was producing a short film called Curmudgeons that was premiering at the BFI Film Festival that his son and daughter directed.
Oh, wow.
And so, so it was great. So I showed up early, and I got to talk to his kids for a while, and then it was hilarious because his son looked over and was like, "Oh, here's Dad." And then Danny DeVito kind of came in, strutting his stuff. And he was hilarious. When I had to put a radio mic on him, he just lifted up his whole shirt and was like, "Do what you need to do." So I was just suddenly looking at a half-naked Danny DeVito, which I wasn't expecting.
And then are you the one that comes up with the questions, or do you have a producer in there feeding them the questions and you're just shooting the A-cam?
For Danny DeVito, I interviewed him, so I kind of had a basic level. Like, we kind of had like 6 or 7 questions you always stuck to, and then once you got a sense of their film, you could build from there. So I kind of had but we had a very short amount of time with them, so I kind of got the questions that we needed.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. And so then you moved on to Pulped as a director for 40 of their comedy sketches, which I watched a couple of them and they're very funny. And you get to work with like Luke Rolleson and Kit Sullivan, who are hilarious. 2 in particular that I really liked was Do Audio Books Count as Reading? And then the driverless, which I thought was hilarious. So how did you get the gig with Pulped, and then to come on as a writer for a lot of the skits as well?
Yeah, no, it was amazing. I kind of tried a different tactic where I was just cold emailing people that I wanted to work with. I kind of always thought that would be annoying, but then I kind of realized, well, the worst thing is they don't respond.
Right.
So I had been part of a group called Box of Charms. So I was shooting a lot of sketches for a handful of people from there. We got into a couple competitions, and I noticed that Luke was in a lot of those competitions. And I really liked his work, and I thought as a director, it was very like visually just insane. So I was really keen to work with him. So I got in touch with him, and I was like, hey, really like your stuff. If you ever need a director, let me know. And then he got back to me, and he was like, yeah, he's like, funny enough, I just got cast for this Disney show, so I've got money to burn on making some sketches, so let's make one. So then we made a sketch, and it was just it was just one of the best shoots where everything just kind of clicked, and it was just like, this is a good group. And then we kind of didn't know what to do with it. Luke didn't want to just put it on his social media page. So I just started emailing people around, and I emailed Pulped. I just saw some of their work, and again, I just thought it was really, really interesting stuff, and they have loads of content, and I just said, hey, would you like to buy this? And yeah, the CEO wrote and said, yeah, I'd love to buy it, and can you make 40 more? So, yeah, and that happened in February last year, and I'm still churning through. I've now shot and edited 32, delivered 16, hopefully shooting 8 more next month.
Oh, that's great. So you shoot and you edit and you write and you direct, correct?
Yeah. So for this one, I right before I got involved with Pulp, I was working on a short film with a friend of mine, and he gave me some advice. He just said, whenever I talk to you, you have a 1,000-yard stare because you are doing every role. And he was like, I think for this short, you need to start handing stuff off, which I was happy to do. It was a case of just money. It was why I never could.
Right.
By all means, I'd love to just focus on the directing side once I've written something. So with the Pulp stuff, I wanted to do that as well. I just wanted to really focus on, especially with comedy, it can go so many different ways if the focus isn't there and you know exactly the vision you want to project on it. So I brought on a friend of mine that I reconnected with from college to film them. And I brought on a sound guy from my last short film, and I've kind of had them on board throughout the entire thing. And yeah, and that made a huge difference because the audiobook one was the only one that I shot almost entirely on myself. And it was just to get some sketches out immediately.
So how do you come up with your inspiration for writing? Like, do you have a topic in mind, or you have to totally create it? And there are two Pulp types of videos, right? Bad Tech and I Hate My Job.
Yeah. So when I got in touch with Julian, the CEO, he wanted strands or themes to highlight. And so I pitched doing one on Bad Tech because the one that Luke and Kit had written fell into this weird tech, like kind of like Black Mirror, but really stupid and comedic. Yeah. Like, what could happen with technology? And then I Hate My Job just because I had loads of either relatable stories with jobs or jobs that don't exist, but what if they did, this kind of thing. So, yeah, so there's loads of stuff on Pulp, but the only 2 that I direct are the Bad Tech and the I Hate My Job. And so it kind of helps when you have 40 sketches like in front of you to kind of at least whittle it down and know that, okay, these need to fall into 2 categories. And then some of the sketches had been written before. Some of them were through Box of Charms that we didn't have the budgets to make.
Okay.
And some of them, I mean, one of them called Leave Me Alone Clone is just airing all my grievances I've had with people trying to make small talk while I'm eating my lunch. So it really varies.
Yeah. So, do you write really fast, or does it take you time? Like a typical script, how many pages are some, because they're pretty short. They're like 2 minutes.
Yeah, so we try and keep them around 2 to 3 minutes. So the page count's usually about 3 or 4 pages. And we kind of have like a formula now, which we've kind of learned from all this, which is kind of, here's the initial idea for a question we're trying to answer, and then build on it, and then it takes a turn, and then the stakes are raised higher, and then there's one last twist ending at, to kind of a final joke to end on. So that's kind of the formula. We stick around. Yeah, did I answer your question?
Yeah, and then do you collaborate with anybody while you're writing? Like I know Kit and Luke write together. Do you have somebody that you write with, or is it just solely you?
So thankfully, early on, after I got this gig with Pulped, I wanted to keep Luke and Kit involved because I really enjoyed working with them. So from early on, we had a team together. So it was Luke, Kit, and then our producer, Georgia House. And so, but like we just kept this group, and we always kind of stuck to whoever writes anything, we'll all come together as a team, read them over, see what's working, see what's not, and then go on from there. So I've always kind of kept to that. So, they're very good at writing really quick. And then usually I just kind of try and bring in a couple elements or try and end it on something so it still feels like, a little bit more relatable, because they have these very big, visually interesting ideas. Whereas I probably do about a couple drafts just to really get my jokes in and really take my time with it. And I just really want to, because like, for me, 40 chances, it doesn't seem like a lot. Like, I really want to get all of them right. And I know that's almost impossible, but I really want to take my time with each script. And then they're great with feedback as well.
Oh, that's great. And then I'm assuming you probably have a budget for each of them, or do you have an overall budget for the 40? And then you
overall budget for the 40.
Okay. And then, so you're directing all of them? You direct all of the 40? And
all 40.
Yeah. And so then, how often are you shooting these?
So we aim to shoot at least 2 sketches per shoot. Every once in a while, if there's an easy sketch, we try and shoot 3. That way we can really maximize the budget, because we had one idea that was so stupid, but we were like, let's put all of our money into this James Bond parody about a drone, because, what's the most noticeable thing in the room? It's a drone. And so it's just, we got these big sets and costumes, and so we put loads of money into that one, so that you do a couple low-key office ones, So it varies. There's obviously the Fringe that happens in August, so that just wipes out all of my talent, because I use all stand-up clowns and comedians for the sketches. And so there's some months where we're not doing anything. Next month, for example, I'm going to be doing like 8, and that's just in weekends and evenings, because I have a full-time job as well. So yeah, I just haven't been very social over the last year.
Yeah, I bet. And then you edit as well. What do you edit on?
So I edit on Premiere.
Okay. And then, what are you shooting on?
So we're shooting on a mix of cameras depending on which DP I have on board. So it's usually an FS7, and sometimes it's an FX9. Okay.
And then, so you have to do you storyboard it too, or do you just like do shot lists? What's your process?
Yeah. So again, we're packing a lot into these days, and so I really need to have everything down to a T and just know exactly what I can get away with in this short amount of time. Because, I'm allowed to do 1 sketch in the morning, lunch, and then 1 in the afternoon, and then you hope you have it. So I actually as well kind of take the weight off of George's shoulders, and I like to do the call sheets, and I like to do the shot lists. I go over the shot list with my DP, because I want him to obviously have input as well, and I kind of bounce things off with him. But for me, the call sheet, when you have to do so much in a day, I just really need to know, instead of Georgia having to tell me you have this amount of time, I need to know just internally, like, okay, I have an hour to get this. And so then it just keeps us on schedule. And thankfully, we've never run over because of that.
And then with the locations, you have like a couple set locations that, I mean, if you're doing 2 or 3 skits, then it's in the same area, I would think.
Yeah. We try and plan. So if we know we have 2 sketches in a house, for example, then we shoot both of the ones that are in a house that day. And Pulped have their own studios, which is really helpful.
Oh.
So they have one room that's just a giant stage, and then they also have a green screen, so we can build sets and do whatever we need to in that space. And then the next room over is their offices, so we use that a lot for their offices. And then they have another office just across the city. So for the office sketches, we get to really keep it varied.
Yeah, and doing comedy, I mean, you must be laughing, like holding back laughter when you're doing the takes.
Yeah, I had my sound guy tell me off once because I was trying so hard not to laugh that my knee was shaking up against a box and he could hear it. So it's just so hard. And some things just, some things that aren't even filmed are just ridiculous. But just,
I know. I mean, it must, I just think comedy is so great. And that's your genre, right? You like to, are you working on any other films that you'd like to do, like a feature or more shorts?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say for longer form stuff like pilots and features, I've always written kind of like darker comedies. I think for sketches, you need to kind of keep it light and snappy, in and out. But I try and, as much as you can, try and say more in my pilots and features that I've written. So I'm currently writing a couple pilots that I'm trying to push now that I have this kind of big backlog of work. And I've recently finished a short film called SOS that I'm currently pushing into film festivals.
Right. Is that the one where you were walking and then get hijacked by the girl?
Yeah.
You want to tell about that story? I found that pretty interesting.
Yeah. So that so SOS is kind of inspired by, I used to have just know a couple people that kind of were, they had their own self-fulfilling prophecy that it was kind of woe is me, and they never really pushed back, and it was kind of like if they just had that little bit more, they could really get what they wanted. And it also was based on the fact that one time I was leaving the station, and this woman fell on me and was crying, and she was like, you have to help me, I've just been mugged. And I was like, of course, yeah. So I go to call the police, and she starts pulling my arm, and she's like, no, they're just down this alleyway, like, let's get them. And I'm like, no. And then she keeps pulling me, and I'm like, no, it's fine, I'll call the police. And by this point, I'm getting suspicious, so then I called the police, and then she just bolted, and then sure enough, the 2 muggers ran around the corner with her. And I just thought, going back to those people that kind of, I was just like, if I just was a little bit more trusting, that, it's always the nice people that, end up falling for this. So I kind of wanted to focus on someone who is a bit of a doormat, and basically SOS stands for sink or swim, and is also like an alarm call. And it was just the idea that this guy gets mugged by the same people, like, throughout one day, and like, how much will he take before he actually grows a spine?
Yeah, I thought it was really, I saw the behind the scenes, which I think is really great that you shot behind the scenes of it. And also, I'm sorry, I forgot what the name of it is where you put the camera on you.
Yeah, so it's called the Snorri Cam.
Yeah, and I loved how you showed how that works and stuff, and how that gives, do you want to just talk a little bit about why you would have that on and what effect it brings?
So, with every film I make, I want to learn something and give myself my own challenges. And so I thought, when I first thought of the story, I thought it'd be really interesting because the main character's so in his own head and in his own world, and he's always just a little bit paranoid and just a bit, it seems like the surroundings are always coming at him. So I thought it'd be really interesting to use a Snorri Cam because it's usually a piece of equipment that's used very sparingly in films. You see it a lot in like Requiem for a Dream or bits and bobs when someone's either drunk or something horrible is happening to them. And it's essentially like a tripod that sticks to the actor's chest. And then that way the actor is always staying kind of in focus, and is kind of the balance for the shot where the background's always kind of moving around and kind of shaky and dizzying. So I wanted to use that. So I just wrote to a company in the Netherlands, and I was like, hey, I want to make this short film. Will you give me one of your snorri cams, like the rigs for it? And if you do, I'll make you loads of marketing stuff. And they did. They just sent it out. Like, it was great. They didn't ask for anything more. They just sent out a brand new snorri cam so I could mess around with it. And that was so helpful, because if I just rented it that day, I would have made so many mistakes. But because I had it, I could just keep testing with it and just was able to figure out all the things I couldn't do.
And did you get to keep it? Or...
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, I find it fascinating to just ask. And you had said something earlier about, like, you reaching out to people. And I think that people don't realize how many yeses they could get if they just reached out. So that's really great that you did that. With your pilots, what is the next step for you to do? Are you going to pitch them to networks, or?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah, I think I feel like I have a body of work that I've written, and along with the sketches, so they can get a sense of who I am. It's probably going to be a mix of, there's a couple, I don't know if it's the same in the States, but there's a couple like free submissions you can put forward. So they have something called like BBC Writers Room, where you just get to submit your script. If they like it, then they just kind of bring you on board to know what it's like to work like with with the TV group. There's a lot of opportunities like that. And otherwise, I'm just keep writing, and if I have any money, maybe submit to some screenwriting competitions.
Yeah, so it seems like you're very active in creating your own stuff, and then also putting yourself out there to get other gigs. So you're are you looking for other, like, what's your full-time job?
So I basically shoot and direct a lot of corporate commercials. So that's like a full-time job. But thankfully my boss, he's a friend from college. And so he's just been really supportive, and he's basically like, you get the work done, and that's great. So I get to work from home a lot, and it saves me having to, go to work. So I just save a couple hours right there, and then I just really schedule in my month with, like, this evening I'm working, this evening I'm not. Today be social and be human, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So do you own your own equipment, or does the company provide you the equipment?
So I own my own equipment because, I used to shoot like a lot of documentaries. So that's, for example, The Unknown Masterpiece. That was a feature doc that I just shot on my own, just with my own equipment. And then with the Pulp stuff, my DP has his own equipment, and then Pulped has loads of equipment as well that they just let me bring.
Do you want to share? I just had your mother on the podcast. She was a photojournalist for music concerts, put this documentary together called The Unknown Masterpiece. Do you want to talk to us about what that's about and why you decided to do this story?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That, like, whatever I do moving forward, that will always be the thing I'm most proud of. It's basically, I've had a very unique upbringing. So my mom had this amazing career as a photographer, did loads of interesting stuff, and then basically kind of gave it up for me when she had me. And she left LA, moved to Seattle. And so I never knew her really as an artist. So I just kind of knew her of kind of taking whatever job she could to kind of keep us going. And so I really wanted to kind of focus on her and kind of respect her legacy. And then she, basically, to give you some context, the film is about her relationship with a puppeteer called Michelin Sisti. So they used to date in their 20s, and basically it was before they really had their careers, and they broke up, and that was actually kind of the launch pad for both of them. So my mom became a photographer for a lot of musicians, and then Michelin became a puppeteer. So he was in stuff like, he was in the bodysuit for Michelangelo and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. She was Charlene in Dinosaurs, and he's now the arms of Animal. But I didn't know who he was until I was about 20 years old, because basically the year that I had out of college, when I couldn't afford to go back, my mom wanted to keep me motivated to, like, why are you getting these odd jobs to go back to school? So she put me in touch with Michelin to be on a film set. So I went over to Canada to, I don't know what my role was, look at the puppets for Cats and Dogs 2. And he was just so supportive right away. He was a real kind of father figure. Just immediately was just there for me. And when I got the job at Shorts, I was able to travel to LA a lot. And that was great. So every time I went there, it was just kind of every time like, oh, let's meet for a day, let's meet for lunch, like, oh, and then it became, over the course of 10 years, he was my dad. So I really wanted to, back in 2017, I really wanted to kind of respect both their legacies and really focus on the balance between kind of personal and professional, like what you kind of give up for relationships, because they had slowly reconnected, and, they still very much love each other. So it was kind of highlighting their past, where they are now, and that balance, because, you can be on film sets 15, 16-hour days,
Right.
not see any loved ones. And it's just finding that balance, and, what's priority for each person. Because my mom took the personal and he kind of took the professional.
And you put it into film festivals.
Yeah.
And
oh, go ahead.
and where can people see it if they want to see it?
Yeah, so I'm actually, I've set up my own company with the pulp sketches, so I'm hoping to release it. I've had to release it maybe in a poetic way, just release it on Mother's Day, so I might just do that. Why not? Yeah, we'll figure it out. So yeah, I want to get it out there for people to see now, so everyone else can kind of see their body of work.
Oh, that's great. So any last thoughts or tips for filmmakers out there in, making things happen for themselves?
Oh, definitely. So when I was interviewing a lot of these filmmakers, I used to ask the question of like what advice you would give. And I stopped asking it because all of them gave the same answer. And it was just make stuff.
Right.
Because you're only going to learn from that. And that just always rang true with me. Because if you're always, make stuff that you're building or learning, make sure you're always adapting. Because I think sometimes that gets misconstrued with, making the same stuff over and over and not growing. So I think with every project, you should be learning something or challenging yourself. And then, the big one that I've learned this year is just email people.
Right. Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, no, thank you. I wanted to say as well, I've really enjoyed discovering the podcast from, because I wanted to do a little bit of research about you. So I really enjoyed some of the previous episodes and other roles that I wouldn't have really thought about. Like, I think it was Nikki who did like the one on TikTok.
Nikki Unplugged.
Yeah, and that one I learned loads because I'm not on TikTok, and I was like, how does that work? And that was really interesting to me. So so thank you for doing this podcast.
Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to get out there and make a film. Reach out to your local filmmakers group to get involved and connect. Please subscribe to the show if you like it, and follow me on Instagram @TammyMagaro. Until we meet again, what's your story?